I'm getting close to Jodie's mic. Welcome to the first of our career services webinars. This one is on writing resumes and cover letters, and it will be facilitated by Jodie Rettinhouse, Career Advisor from our Career Center. So Jodie, take it away.
All right. Well, thank you so much for having us. We're very excited to be involved in this webinar series. Polly is exactly right. Today we're going to talk about resumes and cover letters. Oh, sorry. Okay. All right. So a little bit about the Career Center, just briefly. We do have alumni services at the Career Center. So for a lot of you out there that might be needing some help with a career change, or maybe perhaps even you're a recent grad and looking for your first position, we can offer you most of our services via phone or Skype, or if you'd like to come up to Chico or you're in Chico, we can meet you one-on-one, but we just want to get that out there, that is something that is available to you. So we're going to talk today about resumes. I thought that I would start out by telling you a little bit about myself and where I come from. I've worked here at Chico State for about 12 years in the Career Center, working with all kinds of students from all different majors and seeking all different types of occupations. Prior to that, I worked in sales and management for 6 years. I also worked in human resources for a manufacturing company. And most recently, before coming to Chico State, I worked in the staffing and recruitment industry where I was a corporate recruiter. So over the years, I've worked with literally thousands of job applicants and hundreds of employers. And so I feel like you know, I have a good background for talking to you about what employers are looking for in a resume and cover letter. That being said, I like to preface every discussion about resumes and cover letters by saying that there's really no right way. And this is, you know, how I feel is the best way to help you write a resume and cover letter, but there are certainly other opinions, and there are other ways that I might advise as well, depending on a person's situation. But I just find that these things we're going to talk about today are the easiest ways to teach someone about resume and cover letter writing. And we do have questions, right, Polly? So you can write your questions there in the chat box, and Polly will be on the lookout for them, and then she'll alert me, and we'll try to answer questions as we go along, as well as at the end of my presentation. So we're going to start out by talking about basically what is a resume? What is the job of a resume? And it's important to remember, and I think a common misconception is that it's just going to be a list of all my past experiences. I just write down everything I've done, and sometimes people will come and say, well, it's everything within like the last 10 years, correct? That once it's gone over 10 years, then I shouldn't put it on anymore. And the truth of the matter is that it's a marketing tool. It's everything about your background that the future employer, the prospective employer, is going to be interested in, that is going to make you a key candidate for that job. So I think by starting with that frame of mind, we can, and always thinking back to that, it will help us as we decide what we're going to put on our resume and how we're going to phrase it. That being said, there are a variety of areas that we can draw from in order to devise the resume. Whoops, went too far. Okay. So these aren't necessarily your section titles on your resume, but these are just the areas that you can draw from to start creating value for that future employer. Okay, so obviously your name and contact information needs to be clear. In my years of reviewing resumes, I've had resumes with typos for the phone number, and I'm not going to bother to look up that person's phone number to call them for an interview. So that needs to be absolutely correct. Your education, usually we're speaking of higher education, college degrees. Our community involvement might be important, leadership, our experience. Again, sometimes students or other job seekers say, well, I don't want to put that on because it was unpaid. But it might be your most valuable experience as it relates to the occupation that you're seeking. So just because it's unpaid does not mean that it's not valuable, because employers really are looking for a person who has the skills and abilities to do the job, and if you gain that in an unpaid position, then that's where you gain that experience. and of course awards or recognition. In terms of technical skills, I think people think about technical skills as being computer skills or electronics or hardware. But the reality is that a technical skill could be anything that is technical to your profession. So for a person who might be going into farming or ranching, it might be how to drive certain ranch equipment. For a person that is going into child development, it might be technical skills for devising curriculum. So it doesn't have to just be technical skills like we think of them in the IT field. But of course, obviously for people that are seeking what we consider technical positions, then those would apply. So those are typically the things that, again, we draw from in order to come up with our content. It's also important to look at that we're going to talk about later kind of how to dissect what employers, where to find information from employers as to what they're looking for. But we can always rely on the things that universally just about all employers value. It doesn't matter if you're going to go work in the medical field or engineering or sales or social work. For the most part, across all disciplines, employers value these things. So when we're coming up with content for our resume, we're going to talk about the actual things we did in our past jobs, in our past experiences, as they relate to the job that we're applying to. But we can also rely on or go back and think about, well, where did I display excellent communication skills? And we might want to consider those things. This information is derived from the National Association of Colleges and Employers, which is the professional association that we belong to in the Career Center. And every year they do a survey asking employers what they look for in a college grad. So next we're going to talk about just some kind of overall tips, I guess you'd say, or guidelines. Okay, and remember, when I started, I said, you know, there's not a right or wrong, that there's varying degrees of opinions from various human resources professionals or career counselors or recruiters as to how a resume should be structured. But these are just the things that I think are helpful for people when they're putting their resume together. You only want to tell the reader, the employer, the recruiter, what she or he needs to know. Okay? So an example of telling the recruiter what they don't need to know might be something like, I graduated from high school and from this high school in this year. Because if we're going for a job that requires a college degree, they don't need to know the year you graduated from high school or from what high school in most instances. Unless maybe you were applying for a teaching job at that high school, then it might pertain. Another thing to consider is that first impressions matter. So you want to brand yourself very quickly. One of my colleagues, Art Cox, always speaks about the prime real estate on the page. We want the important information to be as close to the top of the page as possible, because the reality is that that is what they're going to typically read first. I think there's a misconception out there that we're going to have the luxury of the employer reading our entire page. When the reality is, if they have a stack of 100 resumes in front of them that they're screening, they're going to read the resume until it no longer interests them, or until it interests them enough to pick up the phone and call you for an interview. So it's very typical that if they're not seeing the information they want, they might just put your resume aside. And again, when I show you the samples of resumes, a lot of this will come to life and you'll see what we're talking about. We want to use what we consider a proper format. And again, we can go all day long about how big the margins need to be and what size font. Generally, we say somewhere in that 10 to 12 point font range, and it needs to be clean and easy to read. The margins can vary. You can get a lot of ideas from format based on the examples I'm going to show you, based on the Career Center website, as well as even just Googling formats online. You don't want to leave any information up for interpretation. Just how the employer is not going to go and look up your phone number that's incorrect on the resume, they're also not typically going to do research on something say, for instance, CAVE. If you said, well, I volunteered for CAVE. Well, if most employers that aren't familiar with Chico have no idea what that means, and so it becomes very ambiguous, and they're probably not going to Google it to find out what that activity was that you did for CAVE. Another example might be you did a landscaping job. So it was one of your past work experiences, and you want to talk about, we're chatting about your resume, and you say, well, I really want to talk about landscaping because it demonstrates my strong work ethic. But if we don't make that clear to the employer that that's what you're demonstrating, they're going to read it for what it is, and that you did a landscaping job and probably that you used lawn mowers and you swept sidewalks. So if we want to communicate the skill that we're trying to portray being a strong work ethic, we need to say very specifically something like demonstrated a strong work ethic by reporting to work at 6 a.m. every day during the summer. So then the employer says to themselves, oh, that's right, I really value a person who would report to work at 6 a.m. every day during the summer. But if we don't say that, they're not going to go that extra mile for us and put those two and two things together in most instances. We want to create value and only, again, use the technical skills, which again, as I mentioned, could be things like if you're into, again, I'll say it, ranching or farming, it might be equipment. It could be certain software skills. It could be various, if you're a social worker, it might be various methodologies that you use for your counseling. Anything that would be specific to your industry or your field. And then transferable skills. Transferable skills are those that, again, that list of what pretty much all employers want, communication skills, a strong work ethic, that kind of thing. Though we want to focus on those, but again, we need to make them obvious. So we want to talk about, again, a landscaping job, showing up on time, 6 a.m. all summer long. That demonstrates a strong work ethic because every employer wants a strong work ethic. And then ideally, we're going to be using objective information. And we're going to validate and quantify our statements if we can. So objective means that it's I'm not biased towards it, that it's factual, that kind of thing. In fact, actually, I have a list of how we can look at our statements, and we can kind of go through a list and say, is what I'm saying, is it valuable and objective? Is it easily measurable? Or do I have proof? Would every person applying, or could every person applying for the job say it? And does it mirror the technical skills or the values that the employer wants? If your statements on your resume and cover letter do not match at least one of those criteria, then it might be something you don't include on your resume. Okay, it's that kind of so what? Why are they even telling me this? The employer might be thinking. Do we have questions yet? Okay. All right. So given that criteria of is the statement valuable or objective, one thing that I have a pet peeve, I wanted to point out one of my pet peeves for resumes, and they often appear in that prime real estate, that prime real estate section, as my colleague would say at the top of the resume, is a category that says key qualifications. And the person is telling us that they're an excellent communicator and that they can analyze complex problems and they're an honest and ethical team player and so on. You can read all the lists there. But the reality is that if we use our little check sheet of is it a valuable or an objective statement, well, I think it's not really easy to test someone, okay, if they were an excellent communicator. It's not easily measurable, okay. I may or may not have proof, and if I did have proof, I would want to say what was my proof, okay. If every person can say it, then maybe it's not something I want to talk about, because again, we find that most college students see those lists somewhere of what all employers want, and so they just kind of throw those phrases in order to be able to cover that item on their resume. So we're having some technical things happening here. So you want to be able to validate with an example, if possible. No, we're not there yet. I don't think that's okay. Everything on the resume. So again, this is my pet peeve because it's typically at the top and it's taking up valuable real estate. And as a recruiter, when I saw this list, I went, that's the blah, blah, blah. They're going to tell me whether they're great. And I will do this with students sometimes. I'll say, I'll cover it up with my hand and I'll say, let me guess, this says you're a great problem solver, a team player, and a great communicator. And they always laugh because that's always what it says. So I'd like to present an idea of what it might say. If we decided to have a key qualification section, we might tell our reader that this is for a person, and I have the sample resume at the end. This is for a person who is wanting to combine their experience working in a medical office and their sales experience to pursue pharmaceutical sales or medical software sales. Okay, so they have a strong retail sales background and they've worked in a medical office. So they're wanting to put up at the top of their resume why they have those two key areas of experience in order to qualify for pharmaceutical or medical software sales. And so they're saying, I have knowledge of medical terminology and standard medical office practices. Well, they would have proof that they worked in a medical office, and it could easily be measured by another person whether they knew medical terminology. Okay? We could make that a fact at some point. Yes, they have experience working with physicians in a busy medical environment. We could check their employment records and we could see that. So they would have proof of that, okay? And it also mirrors the technical skills that the employer is looking for. They have proven sales. They're a proven sales professional, and they've been top-ranked salesperson on a team of 11 for the first 3 quarters in 2012. Okay, that's quantifying. There's just no doubt about it that that person, if they're telling the truth, which we always tell the truth on our resume, was the top salesperson. Okay, and I also, students will often, or job applicants we're working with will often say, well, I was the #1 salesperson. Well, unless you tell me it's out of how many people, it doesn't really create the value for me. Okay? This person has been cold calling. Well, cold calling is an important skill to have, and a lot of people are apprehensive and afraid to do it. So this person did cold calling working as a fundraising intern for the United Way. Now again, it was unpaid. That doesn't mean that person doesn't get credit for doing that job. They were recognized for teamwork. So see, this is very different than saying I am team oriented. Someone else told them that they had good teamwork, and they received an award, an Employee of the Month award, for 6 times in a 2-year period among 14 people. So again, it's this third party that's validating that they are this way. And they're also a quick learner, and they can be easily trained. That's an important thing in pharmaceutical sales. It's a very steep learning curve. So we want to say right up at the top of the resume, if we choose to have this category, and we don't always need to have this category, but if we did, we would say this is a validation that we have a 3.6 GPA, and that would be something that could be presented as proof for the person has an academic background and can be easily trained. So again, this is kind of how we want to start thinking about how we phrase things. I understand that we might not all have these statistics, or we might not have won these awards, but there's other ways we can phrase things. I mean, I keep going back to the gentleman or woman who had worked in landscaping. Okay, well, that wasn't an award, but it was a fact that it was something the employer could check up on through a reference check that, yes, that person did start work at 6 a.m. every day. Okay, so let's see. I think we're on to our resume examples. And I have I think I have 6 to show you. And again, they are not, but it's not the only way to design a resume. Oh, no, that's my cover letter. So how do I go back to, excuse us for a second. I need to go back to the resume one. So we have Zane Smith, and he's an agricultural business major, graduated just last May. And a couple of things you'll notice, I mean, it's clean, it's easy to read, he's got all of his contact information on there correctly, easy to find. We have, under the education, it's just very clearly stated the year he graduated, or the month and year he graduated. One of the common things we see from our grads and students is that they'll just kind of junk it up with too much information by saying California State University, Chico, Chico, California, when that's obvious. You want to get the exact official name of your degree, because if an employer calls our university to admissions and records to confirm your degree, they will, and that does happen. My husband's had that happen twice. The person on the other end of the line at records will exactly state what your degree says. So if you're saying you have a degree in something that's really your option, you need to know how it's going to be read in terms of your official records. You can always put the option in there as far as, you know, a subheading or what have you. So this person is going for pest control advising. He's going to be entering into the pest control advising field. So he's putting his courses that he's taken to qualify for that exam. So this would be an example of that technical information that would be important for this employer to have, that he's taken those classes. And then generally on resumes, we go, when we get to the experience section, and again, typically for a new college grad, we might recommend that the education goes first because that's usually the most relevant and one of their top selling points. And then typically we might go down to experience, and typically within an experience section, we're going to go in reverse chronological. It doesn't need to always happen to the T, but usually we're going to put the most recent job first within that section. So this, usually we want to keep consistent. This person is saying this was their title, this was the name of the employer, the city and the state, and then we're going to keep that consistent with each job that we list. Again, sometimes we see, well, on this one I'm going to say title and place, and on this one I'm just going to write place, and on this one I'm just going to write my title. Just pay attention to those little details because it's very easy to make it, you know, flow and to be consistent, and it just creates a more professional image. You'll notice that each of the phrases, they're not complete sentences, and that's okay for resumes, starts with an action word. Okay, I personally like all of them to be in past tense, even if the person is currently doing the job, because I feel sometimes like it sounds more achievement oriented. Because, you know, if I was talking to this person, he wouldn't be applying herbicides as we were talking. He would have done it the day before and the day before that. So sometimes I think it sounds more, again, achievement oriented if they're all past tense, but some people really like their resumes for their current job to be in present tense, but it would, to me, it sounds a little bit odd sometimes. But that's up to the individual person. So again, all of this stuff that's on here is related in terms of, in this job, to his technical ability to be a pest control advisor, okay? Also with this entry right here. Down here is where we start when we're talking about his customer service representative job. We're talking a little bit more about those transferable skills, okay? And he's explaining to us that he was promoted from floor sweeping to customer service and hunting guide after less than a year on the job due to exemplary performance and dedication. So if he had just said, you know, demonstrated exemplary performance and dedication, as the employer, I would be like, oh, okay, you wrote that. You and your mother think that, and your friends, but what's your proof that that's the case? And he's providing it as proof that he was promoted after less than a year on the job. And he managed many aspects of the company's guide service. Again, maybe a little bit of a weaker statement because it doesn't have proof, but it's what he did. It's a technical skill of management that he did on that job. And the same thing with coordinating the property rental. We have a section on our website. If we have time at the end, I'll go onto our website and show kind of where you can find some of these tools. But we have a section of all of these action words, all these verbs, check, utilize, promoted, manage, coordinated, and so on, that you can use because sometimes it's hard to come up with exactly the perfect one. And then he has his activities that he was involved with here at Chico State. As you can see, it's just kind of a list. Most employers just want to see with a new college grad how that person was involved here on campus. And, you know, I think looking at their resume, it looks nice. It has that nice border around it. I think it's just a nice looking document. Next we have Anna Hernandez. And this person was a communication studies major, as you can see, at Chico State, also a new grad. She has decided to utilize bold. I don't recommend that we have all over the board, underline, bold, italics, all these different features to highlight certain things, but I think if a person wants to choose one way or maybe two of setting something apart, I think that that's nice. So she's decided to bold the words communication studies and her option organizational communication and her minor in public relations. And she's decided to include her GPA. For a new college grad, we consider anything of being kind of that selling point as anything over a 3.0. It's not to say, because that's what kind of most employers might think of as a good GPA versus not an average GPA. It's not to say that someone with a 2.2 GPA can't get a great job, because they can all day long. We see it all the time. But again, remember, we're looking at this as a marketing tool, so we're going to put the things that are going to sell us, and a GPA over 3.0 usually sells us, whereas something under a 3.0 would be one of those statements that we thought, what kind of value does that provide? And then this person is also mentioning that she studied abroad. That's an interesting fact about her educational experience. So one thing I want to point out about this is she is going for public relations or sales. This person actually did go on to get a sales position with a very well-known tech company in the Bay Area. I'm going to answer the question about one page in just 1 second. We have a question saying, is it still the standard to keep a resume to 1 page? And we will be going over that in just 1 moment. So this person was going for sales or public relations. She ended up getting a great sales job, as I mentioned, with a very well-known high-tech company in the Bay Area. But what I wanted to point out is this is the example of the person's current job, while certainly a very respectable position as a server at Hula's. We didn't want that to be the first thing. If we're branding ourselves, it's just a little bit of a bummer if the person reads that we have this great GPA and we got this very applicable degree from Chico State, and then the first job they see is server at Hula's. Again, they might keep reading it, but it's that first impression, and we want them to continually be excited everything they're reading on this resume. So we said, all right, it's our resume. Let's just create 2 categories so that we can pull up into that prime spot the relevant information. And then within that category, we're still going in our reverse chronological with the most recent job first. And again, you will see it's very clearly stated, the title and the place, the employer name. Again, her fundraising experience was unpaid. Well, it doesn't need to say and be at the very bottom on a 1 line saying enter the activity section. If that's one of her most instrumental experiences, she can put it up into this experience section. And then once again, we have the provided, organized, created. Cold calling, we do, for people that might be pursuing sales, cold calling is one of those things that kind of is cut and dry. Like some people can do it or will do it, and many people will not do it. And it's desired by many employers in sales organizations. So if a person has done cold calling and they like it or just have been able to do it successfully, I like to have applicants put that right there on the resume because it's attractive to the sales recruiter. And then she's going to go ahead and talk about her server job at Hula's, one, because she did it a long time, okay, and it was a very good experience for her. It helped her put herself through college, okay, and you'll see that we have some very good transferable skills there, that she was the first ever employee of the month among 40 employees. So the first time that that company among 40 employers decided to have an employee of the month, she was the one. So I don't care whether she wanted to be a biologist or a salesperson or an IT person or a teacher, I'm going to be attracted to that because they don't have the person who's late and the person who doesn't have a good attitude and a person who's not a good team player be Employee of the Month. She also provided a pleasant atmosphere for customers through attention to detail and friendly service. I mean, this is one of those things that is maybe kind of an obvious item. And she trained and mentored new servers and hostesses to work in a fast-paced environment. Anybody that might be given the responsibility of training, that says something about that person because they, again, the employer doesn't typically ask the person who is not the solid performer to be the trainer of the new individual. And then again, she's got some various activities that she would like to promote. You see she's telling us what CAVE means because most people outside of the university do not know what CAVE means. Okay, so let's just really quickly, I do have a 2-page resume to show in a minute, but the question was, is it still standard to keep a resume to 1 page? I'm not a person about rules, and again, you can talk to, anybody you talk to can have a different opinion. Typically for a new college grad, we would say 1 page is sufficient. That usually by being brief and concise, we can get all the information we need on 1 page. However, our AS president, who's graduating this semester, has a 2-page resume. He has enough. Again, if it comes down to why would you cut something off that's valuable, okay, if the document is continually selling you, there's nothing in your benefit to just cut it short. Because anywhere they look. Where we get into trouble is if the really valuable stuff is at the bottom of the 2nd page and the reader doesn't even get there because they weren't attracted to the things that they were reading on the 1st page. So it is an answer to, it depends what the person has to offer. That is what determines if it is a 1-page or a 2-page resume. But most often, my resume is still 1 page, and I have many, many years of experience. And you're welcome, Marina. Okay, so next we have Jillian. This Jillian is the one, remember I used her key qualifications example. She's working in a medical office as a receptionist, and she has decided she wants to get into pharmaceutical sales. She's probably met a lot of pharmaceutical sales people coming into her place of work. So the situation of objectives is, my opinion, is that if it's not going to enlighten me or educate me, if it's going to say something like looking for a professional job with great growth potential with an up-and-coming company, that doesn't sell you. It's not different than what other people would write. So it needs to have some impact, and it needs to mean something and be different. So she is saying that she's a college grad seeking to combine, and then we underlined 4 years of sales experience with 1 year of medical office experience. Those are the 2 key things that pharmaceutical sales companies like, is some kind of medical background and sales of some sort in addition to a college degree to gain an entry-level position in pharmaceutical sales or medical software sales. So it's important for her to understand that this resume is going to be either for pharmaceutical sales or medical software sales. And if it gets into the hand of someone else, they may think, well, she doesn't want my job, so I'm not going to call her. So you must be very clear about what you're looking for, and it must say exactly that thing. I had an instance in my former life as a recruiter where I had a candidate that had 2 very experienced professional, had a customer service management background and an accounting management background. And she had a software that was kind of rare at the time for accounting that she knew very well. And my client needed an accounting professional that knew that software. And it was on her resume, but her objective said seeking a position in customer service management. And so I presented her resume, and they refused to interview her, even though she had that hard-to-find software that they needed, because they said, yeah, but she really wants customer service management, so even if we hire her, she won't stay. So it's just very important that you understand that the objective could hurt you if it does not match the recruiter's needs. So this is an example of the key qualifications, and this is how we actually have it on the actual person's resume with these items underlined. Okay? I want that person, I want them to very quickly read that I have medical terminology and I understand medical office practices, that I've worked with physicians because that is a huge part of pharmaceutical sales, that I've been a top-ranked salesperson, that I have cold called, that I have teamwork. And again, she's not just saying that she is a great team player, she's verifying it, and that she did well in school. And a person wouldn't need all of these things. If any of you are thinking, well, gosh, I don't have that 3.6 GPA, or I was never given the Employee of the Month. We can work with whatever you have to come up with your list of your key qualifications if in fact you want that category, but you don't necessarily have to even have that category. That's the great thing about working with students and job applicants. Is part of our job is to figure out where you're coming from, what do you have to offer, and how we can craft the document to be the best sales tool that it can be. And then just like on the last resume, we're just going to classify. I just wanted for her, we decided that it would just be good if we had, again, emphasized that I have these two core areas of experience. We have medical experience and we have sales experience. Okay? And again, she's focusing, one of her jobs might have been as a receptionist, that her job was to make the coffee every morning. But again, it's not a list of all your experiences. So if it doesn't create value for the employer, and we don't want to be doing that in our next job, we don't have to talk about that we made coffee. We've seen on resumes time and time again, people that say we're servers, and there's lots of transferable skills of being a server in a restaurant, and yet the things they write on the resume are things like refilled salt and pepper shakers, because they think they have to write everything they've done in the job. So we always want to be thinking about what is that new employer going to care about, okay? Tell them what they need to know, creating the value, okay, and using objective information when we can. And then, again, here's the related stuff. This person may have had some other jobs. They may have worked in landscaping. They may have worked, I don't know, they may have been a nanny. But when we compare it to the other experiences that the person has, it doesn't create the value that these other things do. But if that person had only been a nanny, we would find a way to create value through transferable skills of being a nanny. In going for that position. Everything is strategic here, okay? The fact that we start with the job titles that say the word sales versus putting Macy's Fine Jewelry on the top is because, again, the person's going to be reading this for 3 to 5 seconds before they decide if they want to keep reading it or put it aside. We want them to see the word sales. So everything just about has a strategy behind it. Next we have Mark Jones. Just another of a different style that I wanted to show you. This is an alum of ours. And he has this company named DiceStat. I did change all the names of the companies in my resume just since it's going to be recorded and such. But the name that it really is this name that I think is not a household name. And so, I hope. Anyway, so he decided to put this little descriptor underneath of what that company's about. And I kind of like that in this situation. It doesn't look too busy. It provides me a good background. And then again, he follows with his cut to the chase, action word, here's what I did, okay? Specifically, I know the market in the area, quantifying, so now I know he worked with 50 banking institutions. He transferred up to $90,000 per week. I mean, it gives me an idea of the volume of the responsibility required. And then again, he's got his sales job for blinds today. What is that company? What specifically did he do? And customer service representative, which we added the little term inside sales, the parentheses there. We could have even, I think now in hindsight, maybe we could have put the inside sales : customer service representative. Might have been something we could have done, again, because he was wanting to go for more of a sales management position. And education at the bottom. Not that it has to be at the bottom, but he's had some significant work experience. I think that becomes his biggest selling point at that juncture. And then we have his awards he won, okay? But we also put them up under here. I think we did. Maybe we didn't. We didn't put them up there, but you could. I've done that on occasion where it's like, just in case that employer is skipping around, let's put it here, and let's also put it down here. I mean, it's not like they're going to think you're weird for putting it twice. If there's any more questions, feel free to type them in. We can definitely answer questions as we go along. Here's an engineering resume. It's a little more copy heavy. but it's very, very technical in nature. And so the person that is reading this is going to, if they're seeing what they like, they're going to be willing to kind of wade through some of this text, okay, because this person is very, very technical. They're doing very, very specific things. So again, going back to our checklist, you might say, well, that's not really validated. She's not really validating that she's done project. Well, you could say, yes, she did project and qualification planning, but it also falls under that technical category of that's something that the person we're going to hire needs to have done that, okay? If, again, you'll noticing some of these resumes we're looking at don't have this sort of summary at the top. Some do. In general, I would say we're not a fan of the summary because typically the person doesn't have enough factual, measurable stuff to talk about. And then this person is giving, again, this is all one line, but it's all consistent, title, company, city, state, and the dates. We always recommend the dates are over to the right. Why would that be? Because dates don't sell a person. So why would we have them as the first thing the employer reads when they're reading from left to right? And then the Bachelor of Science in Mechanical Engineering right there at the bottom. I would assume the person didn't have over a 3.0 or else they probably would have put it on their resume. Here's a two-page one for you. This is just an example of what a two-page resume might look like and what a resume might look like in terms of using some color. This happens to be my husband's resume. It's very good. So, oh, oops, I missed some of the color. Shame on me. I took it out and then put it back in. So this one should have some color on it. I could show you how to do color. But, oh, will I be reviewing a teaching resume? No, I will not be reviewing a teaching resume today, but we have advisors in the Career Center. That's the question if I'll be reviewing a teaching resume. We have advisors in the Career Center that can help you with that via a phone appointment, or if you're here, you can, I was going to show you how to do coloring, but I guess it's not working in case you didn't know how to do that. That's where you do it right there, but it's not working on this today, so it made it red. Yeah, well, you wouldn't want it to be red. You would want it to be blue like the rest of it. Okay. But anyway, so he's going through and he's got his summary of qualifications, which again is that very technical information. It's a snapshot. He's got a two-page resume, so he wants to get it right up there at top to communicate. Keep reading my document. I am going to tell you examples of all of this stuff that I've done. Okay, he's got 11 years of experience, and in the real version we listed all those very well-known high-tech companies right there, but not for this. And led, utilizing, he went against it by saying that present, but led, trained, okay, created, implemented, and so on. And it's just still very well designed. It's very easy to see what's the name of the company, what's the title, and here's his education. He is putting some of his training and professional certifications and awards. He was in the Air Force Reserves. Generally, employers like kind of if you have military background, it's an advantage. And then some various certifications that he has. So that would be an example of a two-page resume. And the point is that hopefully, since my husband is a very seasoned technical writer, and everything is technical writing, technical writing, technical writing, they're going to keep reading this to see the examples. But if he wouldn't want to have like supermarket clerk up here, if his good tech writing stuff was back here on the second page, because that's the danger you get into with the two-page resumes, they may not even get there. Okay, so now we're ready to go back to our PowerPoint. So do I just go like this? Or do I go up here? I think that's yellow square. Okay. Okay. Okay, so now we're going to go back to our PowerPoint. We're going to talk a little bit about cover letters. We're going to send, Oh. Does a two-page resume need to say page 1 of 2 on the bottom? It should, because again, what if someone printed off your resume and they were giving it to their colleague to say, look at this, and they left a page on the copier and then the only person saw one page and they said, why did you think this person was so great, to their colleague? So just it tells them that there's 2 pages, so don't forget to read both of them. So now we are going to look at cover letters briefly. Okay, so what a cover letter is a cover letter demonstrates a match between the employer's needs and what you offer. Okay, it aligns your values with those of the organization, demonstrates your written communication skills, and it communicates your passion for the job and the organization. Okay? You need, in order to be able to do these things in your cover letter, you need to research the organization to know what are those values, what are the employer's needs. So you can look at the job announcement, you can look at the company website, you can talk to former and current employees, you can go to Google, and my newfound favorite is Wikipedia. I was helping a student research for Kohl's the other day, and in about 2 minutes we had just everything from their marketing strategies in the store to how long they've been around and their civic engagement. I mean, it's really a quick snapshot. So just like with the resume, I'm just going to remind you of same kind of helpful hints and guidelines. We're only going to tell them what they need to know. First impressions matter, so brand yourself quickly. Don't just leave the good stuff for the bottom. I've heard students tell me, I'm going to save it for the interview. I don't want to talk about that because I'm going to save that. No, we put everything out there because the goal of all this is to get us an interview. We're going to use our proper format. You can find proper format by looking at examples on our website, or you can just Google business letter format, and a really great example will pop up for you. We don't want to leave out our information for interpretation and creating value and validating. All the same things apply. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you some examples of validation. These might be phrases that we see in a cover letter. I'm going to give you what I think of as like the weak version and the really strong version. This is the type of thing we see every day. A person tells us in the first paragraph perhaps, please consider me for the sales position. When I read the job announcement, I felt like it was written for me. We often see them saying, it's my dream job. Okay, if we go back to our, is your statement valuable and objective, just about every person is probably going to say that to that employer. This is my dream job and it was made for me. So when I'm an employer and I read this kind of stuff, I just go skip, skip, skip. Give me the meat of how you're going to solve my problem and be a great employee. So we can change it by saying, please consider me for your sales position. I have proven sales experience demonstrated by my 2-year standing as the #1 sales rep for my current employer. I excel in customer service. Again, all right, prove that to me. I excel in customer service and was awarded a perfect score on 90% of the secret shopper surveys conducted on my performance at Ray's Supermarket. Again, this is the ideal world. I understand that a lot of people work in jobs where they don't have secret shopper awards, but we can come up with other things that are valid, can be validated if this is not your situation. I have excellent communication skills. Everybody says that. But if we want to validate it, we might say my major in organizational communication has provided me with 4 years of public speaking experience and extensive background in business writing. That is proof of being an excellent communicator, because you could not have survived that major did you not have excellent communication skills. I'm dedicated and loyal. We talked about that one before. Ways you can validate that are talking about you won an employee award. You could even say something like, I look forward to you contacting my former supervisor in a reference because she will attest to my dedication and loyalty to this. Okay, you're providing a way for them to check it out and that you're confident that that is your quality that you're communicating. If you don't have, say, awards and so on. I am a fiscally responsible project manager. I am a fiscally responsible project manager staying on time and on budget for the 6 projects I manage while at Daughtry Manufacturing. Okay? And then this isn't a good way, again, there's many ways to write a cover letter, but I feel like sometimes the organization is the hardest part. So I'm teaching you what I feel is the easiest way and the clearest way, and then creativity can flow from there. But I think that generally in our first paragraph, we're going to talk about what job we're applying for. We're going to make it easy on the reader. I'm applying for this job and the top 2 to 3 reasons why I'm specifically qualified. Our middle paragraphs are going to support those reasons, and our last paragraphs, 1 or 2 of them, is going to communicate why we're specifically interested and thank them, a nice cordial thank you. So if we start out about why it's the best job for us, that's all about us. And remember, it's branding yourself as a person as what, that you're a person that they need for the job. So that's why we want that up top. And we can talk about how it's so good for us later on. Okay, so now we're going to go to our examples of cover letters. And I have them right here. Oops, let's see. Right. This part? Double click. Okay, here we go. Yeah, here's the, yep, here, so I just clicked the, okay, okay. Okay, so what I did is I came up with a sample, we're going to have to go kind of quickly here, but I came up with a sample advertisement. Remember I told you one of the ways to research a company was to look at what are they looking for. This organization is looking for a social worker, a caseworker. This would be a typical ad. You can read it there for yourself. But what we can delineate from this is that the key qualifications that they're looking for is they're looking for someone who's compassionate, who has a thorough understanding of Kansas adoption legal process. They have a BA in social work or an MA. They have at least 2 years experience working with birth mothers and adoptive families, and it would be great, only a plus. I've had students not apply for jobs because it said a plus and they weren't bilingual, and it's like it only says a plus. So, but if a person has grant writing and if a person is bilingual, that would be something we'd want to mention. So truly, there's no reason to focus on anything other than these things in your cover letter. Really. I mean, if we only have a certain amount of space. Okay, so this would be an example of a cover letter that we typically see, and I just think it kind of misses the boat. So I'm going to show you this one first. I'll try to make it a little bigger. Oh, I guess they can read it, I guess, yeah. So again, Google business letter format, and you'll get all the formatting provided for you. But you'll see the first paragraph says, I'm applying for the caseworker 2 position at Rainbow Adoption. As you can see on my enclosed resume, I have the experience, skills, and ability to do the job. Well, why not tell them right there briefly what those skills and abilities are, and just sort of referring to this vague, I have the skills and abilities. And then you're saying that it's working for them, would be a dream come true, and is the ideal fit for me. Again, going back to our little check sheet, everybody's going to say that it's the dream job for them. And everybody could say that, look at my resume because I have all these things, okay? And then the other thing about this, and you could go back and look at it later, is that it just goes all over the place. They talk about why they're excited and what they do with their current job. Okay, another pet peeve is that educating the reader about their company. That you have been in business for 30 years, you are a long-standing organization, and you've been, oh, it's kind of repetitive there, so that's an issue, but, oh, and did you know that you're very compassionate to both birth mothers and adoptive families? Okay, well, they know that they've been in business for 30 years, so the person by doing this is kind of, or that they average 120 placements a year, so they're kind of trying to prove, oh, I looked at your website. So you want to be much more creative about showing that you've done your research, and you want to say how you value that as well. And then another thing about this one is, again, they kind of go back and forth. So she talked about her, right here in this paragraph, for the last 3 years I've worked in public adoption, and a little bit about that. It's all the stuff they want to hear. Oh, I think I'll switch to talking about my education for a while. I think I'll talk about education for a while, and I'll mention that I was involved with Up Till Dawn and CAVE. Person's going, what's Up Till Dawn and what's CAVE? I have no idea what that is. Okay. Now I think I'll go back to talking about my current position for a while, okay? And then I'm going to go back to telling you that it's my dream job and a little bit about why I'm passionate about it, and thank you. So it's very unorganized, and it is very just a lot of things needs to be improved. I mean, this could still work for her because it's all there, but I think it just could be so much better. And this would be an example of what I think the ideal cover letter might look like using this concept. Using the prime real estate analogy, we want that first paragraph immediately. We're telling the reader, I have absolutely everything you want. They don't have a master's degree, but that's okay. And they wouldn't highlight this in red. I highlighted this in red for you so you could see. They said they wanted someone that was compassionate. And we also know that passion for the job is what all employers want. So she's saying, I have a passion for adoption, and the reason why, that she's going to expand on later. I graduated with my bachelor's degree. I have 3 years of adoption case management experience. I have grant writing experience, and I'm Spanish speaking. Okay, right there. wow, as an employer, I'm really excited and I want to know more. I want to keep reading. And then she goes on, and each paragraph talks about one of those things, okay? Or in some instances, you know, maybe we weave in one of the more minor points. She's talking about this passion thing and only talking about that, about when her 15-year-old sister became pregnant and placed her baby in an open adoption. I mean, that's interesting. That shows an interesting story. It's okay to talk about those things. The next paragraph is all about the education. One paragraph about getting the BSW and taking the grant writing and then validating. Even if that person had not gone on to write $200,000 worth of grants, this is something as a validated statement. Yes, I did take that grant writing class. And if she got a good grade in it, she could easily mention that there. And then we're on to her work experience. She's going to have 2 paragraphs for her work experience. One about her internship and one about her professional experience, where she is talking about the process that they said they wanted, that she handles all this first contact with adoptive families, okay, and that she's bilingual. And then this last paragraph is that quick little thank you and a little bit of a lining of we're right for each other because we have the same values, but it's a more subtle way of saying it. I'm particularly excited about your industry leadership in terms of placements per year. They know that it's 120. I mean, it's, you know, they could mention that, but and your reputation as a highly ethical organization. So every employer wants to hire someone that really wants to work for them, so that's why we want to talk about those things. But I believe it's less important than what you are specifically offering them in terms of how you're going to be able to do the job. And feel free to type in the questions. We have a couple more minutes. Here's another cover letter. It's a little bit shorter, but again, this is a person looking for retail management. But again, they have fewer qualities that they're mentioning in that top paragraph, but they're right there. I'm looking for, the store is called Redland Department Stores, Redland Management Trainee Position. This is when I graduated with my relevant degree, and I have since worked as a sales associate at housewares, etc. I have retail. All validated things, why you were drawn to it. Maybe this is going against my rule a little bit because it's why they love it, but it's fast-paced. It shows the employer, I know what that environment is about. And I have a solid performance reviews. That is proof. They could ask you to produce those. Given the responsibility of training new associates, yeah, we have a question. I'll get to that in just a second. And then a little bit about his curriculum. Now, this is an example of how we might talk about Up Till Dawn to create a benefit to the employer. One notable effort was serving as the co-chair of Chico State's Up Till Dawn campaign, a campus-wide fundraising event to raise money for St. Jude's Children's Hospital, Research Hospital. We raised $112,000 last year, second highest school in the nation, which was up $10,000 from the previous year. Okay, that is measurable. This person is a go-getter. This person achieves great things. That's what that employer is going to be thinking. And then they're going to align themselves with the employer's values by saying, as you can imagine, I was particularly excited to hear of Redland's fundraising efforts for juvenile cancer research. A transition, in addition to Redland's civic involvement, as a person who continually strives for success, I'm intrigued by Redland's industry performance in recent years. Your coupon program is ingenious, and I'm a big fan of your light and bright style of merchandising, which was what that employer called their merchandising once the employee did the research. So it's just it's saying, I know this company, and I'm giving you exactly what you asked for in a little bit of a more interesting format than a resume. So we're about 1 minute over, but we'll really quickly answer. That was all the cover letter examples I had for you. We will ask, this question is, there's a couple questions. The question is, if I'm applying for a job using an online application and it says a cover letter is optional, should I always include one? I believe you should always include one if it is a job you really, really want and you think you have a good shot at it. Cover letters can be a little more time consuming, so we always have to think about how much time am I spending on this cover letter versus how many jobs I could apply for in that amount of time. You know, a quick and easy application that you're exactly qualified for might take 20 minutes if your resume is already completed, whereas it does take some time to do the research on the cover letter. So if you have time and it's a job that you think is a very good fit for you, I would always include it. And it says, what type of paper should the cover letter and resume be printed on? Typically, we're not even using paper these days because it's electronic. If a person is attending a career fair and they want to have a printed resume and cover letter, then you can choose to do a nice paper, a resume type paper, but our employers are telling us that because they're so used to getting electronic versions, it's less important than it used to be. And certainly if you're going to be using a resume paper, have it be very simple and conservative, not like marble or shadowed or that kind of thing. Any other questions? Should I really quickly go to the website? If I click down here and go to our website, will it, if I just go to the Explorer, will it come up? Or? And feel free to type in questions. I'm just going to really quickly show you the Chico State Career Center website so you can see where there's resources for you. This one again. Can we get a copy of the PowerPoint? Well, the PowerPoint is going to be available, right, Polly?
Yes.
Can we? Okay. And the other question was, can we email our resumes to an advisor for review? Okay, we do not do resume reviews over email because you can imagine how long it would take us to type out our suggestions. It would just be so labor intensive. And we usually kind of mark on the resumes and that kind of thing. So the best thing is to come to our office, if you're local, between 1 and 4, every day that school's in session for our drop-in advising. But if you live out of town, what you can do is you can set up a phone appointment by calling our office, which is 530-898-5253. It's also on the cover slide and on our website. And you can set a phone appointment and then you can email your resume like just before your phone appointment so that you and the advisor both have your document in front of you and the advisor can just kind of talk you through some suggestions. And should I just right here? Okay. I was waiting for it to, sorry. Okay, so this is the Chico State Career Center website. Right here under students and alumni, that's you. So right here under resumes and cover letters, we have all kinds of samples. We have the list of the action words, okay? We have a tool called Optimal Resume that is it's a tool for constructing the design of the resume. It'll help you, put headings in a certain spot, and it prompts you for certain sections that you might want. It's a very good tool. It's not an end-all, but it is a free resource for you. We have the sample resumes, and then here's those, just all the information. Here's the transferable skills info, quantifying your accomplishments. Here's that list of those action words. Okay, that's really a great cheat sheet for you, as well as samples here, very similar to the ones I showed you. And then we have the same thing for cover letters right here. So you can look at examples, text on how to do a cover letter and then examples. So any other questions before we close up? The next webinar is going to be November 22nd, and it's going to be on networking. So thank you all for joining us, and thank you for putting up with our kind of technical abilities at times. We appreciate that, our learning process, and thank you again.